There are a lot of things that are still a mystery about Koenji Rokasuka. Where he came from or what he wanted to do in school are two questions that are most awaited to be answered. However, based on a few hints so far, we should be able to make a pretty good guess about it. Koenji was one of the first characters who got introduced in the series, and even since the first volume, we already got a bit of his background as the son of a conglomerate. However, his full story is not yet revealed, and his goal is as bright as the night sky, with just a few hints dropped in each volume. So, let's take a look at it one by one. Let's start with Koenji's background, because no matter how you look at it, there is no way Koenji had a normal and peaceful childhood. Unfortunately, there are not so many clues that could lead us to where Koenji came from. During the T-Rex scene from Volume 8, Koenji said he's surprised that there is a Japanese person who could match his size, which could indicate that Koenji is not a pure-blood Japanese. This possibility later becomes more convincing in Volume 12.5, where President Koenji said that his business mainly operates overseas, especially in America, so Koenji is probably a quarter or half American. However, in Volume 11 Second Year Arc, Koenji said he actually preferred going back to China to continue his training, where he probably met Michan in the past. Since Michan's family moved to Japan when she was in middle school, that means Koenji had been training in China for at least 3 years. Koenji training in China is the next question. From what we have seen so far, Koenji possesses incredible intuition, a flexible way of thinking, and extraordinary physical ability. I like to think that Koenji training to become a Shaolin master, but Koenji's mindset is way too different from theirs. Koenji is an arrogant person with a firm belief in himself as the apex of humanity. Koenji believes that the strong could do whatever they want, while the weak have no right to judge them. Koenji looked down on others, and from the way he behaved, he must have never lacked anything in his life because he spent money without any care to save it. It's quite hard to believe that he was a lab rat from Kijima's secret facility like a lot of readers believe him to be, because other than his selfishness, Koenji doesn't show any defective trait like Ayanokoji, nor did he look like he was acting to hide it. However, it is wrong for us to think that the Kijima secret facility is the same as the White Room. We know nothing about that secret facility, so it could have a completely different curriculum with a completely different goal. If the White Room teaches their students with all knowledge possible, perhaps Kijima's secret facility educates Koenji to act like someone in his status, and prepares him to replace his father as the company president, or to become a great politician just like Kijima. And that's why Koenji could develop a great intuition, doesn't lack common knowledge or confidence, but lacks in academics. If we look at the good relationship between Kijima and President Koenji, I guess it's safe to assume that Koenji really was educated in Kijima's secret facility. If that is true, then Koenji's enrollment at ANHS was the result of some kind of agreement between them. Just like what I said, Koenji was most likely educated to be a leader, but he really lacks leadership, and that's why they sent him to ANHS. Even with all his unhinged actions, one thing that Koenji cares the most in the school is to not getting expelled. The reason is unknown, but if he really was sent to ANHS by his father, then graduating from school must hold a really important meaning for Koenji. In Volume 12.5, President Koenji said that as a condition to acknowledge his true freedom, Koenji needs to keep his current class and graduate as Class A. This single line could give us a lot of interpretation. But the point is, President Koenji uses his son's freedom as the bargain, which means the reason Koenji needs to graduate is because he's fighting for his freedom. This is in line with his word from Volume 11 Second Year Arc, where he said he preferred going back to China instead of attending ANHS. Although he is always portrayed as a free spirit, Koenji cannot disobey his father, and that is why he needs to graduate so he can achieve his true freedom. There is a very interesting line from Koenji's conversation with Ayanokoji in Volume 12.5. He said that the weak have no right to speak about injustice, and the strong could do anything that they want. If Koenji really meant what he said, that means he acknowledges that he is weak in front of his father, and he has no right to complain about his father's decision to send him to ANHS. Koenji was probably sent to ANHS so he could bring Class D to graduate as Class A. However, it seems like President Koenji didn't give his son a specific order, because Koenji never cared about his class future, and that was because he found the loophole that nobody ever expected to exist. Shortly after enrollment, Koenji spent almost his entire point for luxury. He often visited the cafe and let himself be spoiled by the older women. However, after his private point ran out, he spent his break time inside the class, looking at himself in the mirror and wondering how he could get more money to spend. Koenji has almost unlimited money at the outside, but in the inside, he was broke just like the other students of Class D. However, while surrounded by upperclassmen, Koenji's intuition immediately found the loophole. While he himself cannot contact the outside, he could send his message to the outside by using the graduate upperclassmen, and not only a regular message, he could even send a check worth 1,000,000 yen. In this way, Koenji could buy private points from upperclassmen and pay them with his name on the paper. This method was first revealed by Nagumo in Volume 8, but this had actually been foreshadowed back in Volume 4. When Koenji is done swimming, he walked through the hallway wearing nothing but a bathing suit under his waist. A bellhop that found him asked him to dry himself, but not only did Koenji ignore his word, he asked for a paper and put his signature on it. He said his signature will hold a tremendous value in the future, and he gave it to the bellhop as the payment for his trouble. Koenji paid with his signature, and the receiver could exchange it for the actual money in the future. This method sounds really untrustworthy, but it could work because he is Koenji, who already registered as the next president of the conglomerate. Koenji took full advantage of his status, and that is the thing that makes him different compared to the kindergartners. Nagumo made it clear that he will ban that method, but since he could freely transfer 3 million points to Ayanokoji at the end of his school year, it seems there are still a few loopholes left, and Koenji must have figured everything out for his plan. Even though we never get any further information about this method, we get a bit of a clue about Koenji's next strategy in Volume 10 second year arc. Koenji was going on a date with a third year named Enoshima Midoriko, and Ayanokoji noticed a few unusual things about his date. First, the date ended so fast that Ayanokoji did not even have a chance to eavesdrop. Second, Koenji's drink went missing. Third, Koenji refused the money from Michan, saying that he didn't need money right now. And last, Koenji stated that he still has multiple dates after that. If Koenji really tried to buy their private point, it could explain why he refused Michan money and why he needed multiple dates, because there is no way he could get 20 million points from a single student. As for why their date ended so fast and why Koenji drink went missing, I think that was part of their strategy to avoid the school rules. Since the school already prohibited buying private points, what they did clearly broke the school rules, so they need to find a way to not get caught. Discussing their plan through the chat will leave a trace on the school system, and discussing it in public will have a risk of getting caught, so their only safe communication should be to talk in private, but they didn't do that. They were openly having a date in the cafe, but it ended so quickly with Koenji missing coffee as the only clue. If Koenji will pay Enoshima after he graduates, then they will need a legal written contract to make it happen. And since the contract paper could be easily folded and hidden, it could be easily delivered in a disguise, for example, inside a cup of coffee. Koenji only needs to wrap it with plastic and hide it inside the coffee and give it to Enoshima, and no one will ever find out about the contract. Since Koenji already has a reputation as a guy who loves older women, most people will think they just have a regular date. And since it's Koenji, no one will care even if he dates multiple women. They probably already reached an agreement before, and that date was only to give her the contract that Koenji had already signed. That way, no one will ever find out, and nobody will get suspicious of him. The way to transfer the point is a bit tricky, but quite easy to guess. Since transferring a huge amount of points will attract the school's attention, Enoshima and the other girl need to transfer their points periodically in small amounts to not attract the school's attention. Since the students exchange points every day, they would not question Koenji's amount of points. Even if they did, Koenji could easily make an excuse that he won a bet against them or something. And since the upperclassmen already graduated, it will be hard to prove Koenji's word. If Koenji could secure that kind of contract with 20 or more students, with each of them selling him 1,000,000 points, it's no wonder that he could buy a plasma TV and doesn't need any money from Michan. Koenji probably already has 20 million points to transfer to Class A at the end of his school life, and he only needs to keep it for a year to achieve his freedom. However, Volume 12.5 changes everything. Since his father ordered him to graduate as Class A with his current class, Koenji's strategy to transfer using 20 million points could no longer work. It's unfortunate for Koenji, but as the weaker one, he has no option but to obey. At least, he already has 20 million points and protect points to secure him from expulsion. However, Koenji's strategy is interesting to analyze, because it somehow shows us that Koenji values his freedom the highest. Even when his father ordered him to graduate as Class A, Koenji chose a method that suited himself instead of carrying his class to the top. Koenji finds the loophole and refuses to actually play in the palm of his father. It will be interesting to see how Koenji will react after getting the order from his father. Since Koenji didn't really do anything in the Volume 1 third-year arc, it's probably a sign of his rebellion. Perhaps the reason why Koenji refused to cooperate since the beginning is his way to rebel against his father. He refuses to play within the school system because true freedom doesn't come because you fight for it, but from the way you could ignore everything that you don't like. After all, freedom is not something that you seek, because it's already inside you ever since you were born. Although Koenji is not yet strong enough to completely disobey his father, I hope Koenji could teach a bit of his freedom to Ayanokoji. After all, Ayanokoji is the strongest, and no one should be able to tell him what to do.